Lights out and welcome to the Championship Lap, your front row seat for everything F1 from race weekend chaos to stories unfolding across the grid. We'll be covering the races that shape the fight for the championship. Every race, every headline, we're here to talk about it all. So buckle up, you're listening to the Championship, the F1 podcast. Hello, guys. We are doing a remote recording today for various reasons. So we've got myself, Robin, we've got Megan, and we've got Tom on the line just to chat over the Japanese Grand Prix primarily, and I've got a few other questions going forward. The future of F1 later on. But I thought we'd start off with the qualifying, if you guys don't mind. I thought Q1 was interesting. I thought obviously Ollie Bearman had an interesting race as well, but in qualifying, he qualified in 17th, which obviously was 1.175 seconds behind at that point. So obviously a bad weekend for him, given that he was fifth in the championship going into this race weekend. Megan first. What did you make to Bearman's Q1 quali? Just quickly before we get into the race side of things for him later on.
I mean, I feel like it wasn't a good weekend for him in general. I feel like
Yeah.
also Suzuka can be quite a challenging track because there are high speeds that go into it. And I do know that a lot of the drivers were complaining about the traffic yesterday, especially even in qualifying, like the whole time. Um, I don't know, it just wasn't a strong performance from him. I don't know how you guys thought if there was ways that he could have improved that. I think also just comes down to the car as well as it always does. It's always the car.
Yeah, it was a strange one, wasn't it? I think maybe it's just a bit of an off day for him. Maybe that car doesn't suit that track. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, Esteban obviously qualified, what was it, P12. I think if Esteban had made it into Q3, then maybe, we would have been thinking, oh, okay, well, it was definitely a very bad weekend for Ollie. I mean, I
It
think
was a very bad weekend.
well, it was obviously, but I think perhaps your point about just the Haas not being so suited to that track is maybe a valid one. I think P18 looking at the first two races is not where he should be or would want to be. But it looks like Ollie's getting a lot out of the car generally from the first two races, so I think he will be disappointed with the quali, but obviously the race is another matter entirely as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just a quick mention to my favorite driver from this season, my hero, Colapinto, making it through Q1. Obviously, rooting for him a little bit this season. It's just really nice to see him get past Q1 after having a pretty atrocious time last season. And yeah, I did really think his time was done. So it's nice to see, isn't it, that he's back, Tom, and doing okay.
Yeah, it is good because you never know with Alpine. They one of the teams that like to chop and change their driver lineup a little bit. So you never quite know. But yeah, it would be good to see him. Given a full season. And again here and yeah, it looks like he's starting to get a bit more out of the car. So yeah, hopefully, it'd be nice to see him. Yeah, get into the points and because Gasly's been doing really really great in that car as well. So hopefully they can close the gap a little bit between them.
Well, that's a nice segue because I was just literally about to ask you, Megan, about Alpine and Gasly. Obviously, qualified P6 in Q2. Alpine generally they look quite strong this year, don't they?
Yeah, no, I think compared to last year where they didn't have a good time whatsoever, they were very much struggling throughout the entire year. It's quite nice to see them actually up in the middle of the pack. Like, I don't know how you guys think about that as well, but I think it's really nice to see a team finally, I think they're starting to finally get it. And I think whatever they're doing behind the scenes that we may not be seeing, it's paying off. So it's quite nice, especially for Pierre, because he is like they're both talented drivers, but especially for Pierre, he's been on the grid for so long. It's great to see him finally, getting those points that he's wanted for so long.
That's so true because you always forget like Pierre Gasly seems to be around for years. Is this his 10th season? I might have got that completely wrong, so apologies to anyone listening. But he has been around a long time in F1. Obviously, he was at Red Bull, wasn't he, and Alpine now, and jumps around a few different cars, isn't he? But someone that's having a bad time at Red Bull at the moment is Max Verstappen. Um, Obviously, we'll get onto the race itself later. But in terms of qualifying, Q2 out in 11th place, and I heard on the radio mic afterwards where he literally just says something completely undrivable. So yeah, it's not going particularly well, Tom, is it, for Max in quali at the moment? Is it? Do you think is he just blaming his tools, or does he have a point? Do you think?
I mean, first thing to say is it's pretty unprecedented for Max not to be in Q3. Clearly something is up there. I think it's probably, in my opinion, a combination of things. I think, um, you know, he's not happy with the car. He's not happy with the regulations generally, and I think, those things together mean that his attitude is probably very different. His as we've seen, and I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later, his heart doesn't quite seem to be in it this season, and that will, undoubtedly have an impact on the way that he, is setting himself up for quali. His attitude and his motivation. So, I think there's a factor of things, but we hear this a lot from drivers when things aren't going their way for various reasons, and they use the term undrivable a lot. Obviously, I've never sat in an F1 car. I've never sat in Max's Red Bull, so I can't really comment on whether it is drivable or not. But I think it's a word that's it's thrown around quite a lot, particularly when things aren't going their way. And Max is someone that we know that often does throw his toys out the pram when things aren't going his way. So it's interesting because, if we compare it to Hadjar, he does seem to be getting more out of the car, and this is something we just never see at Red Bull. The second driver, getting more from the car than Max. So, you know, it's there's a lot to unpack as to what really is going on behind the scenes, but I think there's a lot of factors that are applicable here.
That's such a good point. It might be more of a case of maybe, before we've spoken about, I think on the first episode about Albon and the specifications and him finding the car at Red Bull undrivable when he was at Red Bull. Maybe they're making it more of an even playing field. Megan, do you think that might be the case, or am I going up a slightly weird tangent here?
For the playing field in which aspect? Sorry.
Well, just more like, do you think they're trying to make it fair on Hadjar, making the car more sort of, drivable, so that he's finding it easier, and maybe Max isn't liking the spec and, the sensitivity, those kind of things.
I would say yes, to an extent. I would say that obviously the time of Christian Horner has passed where he was prioritizing Max and his best driver on the team. So I do think that is a new kind of generation in Red Bull, but also I think the regulations as well have played such a big aspect. He's been very vocal about how difficult it's been with these new regulations that have been put into F1. Um, so I think that's also probably playing a part in his performance overall because he's also stated like Red Bull is a mid-tier car now. It's not how it is like it's not Mercedes like this year as they are. So I don't know, like Tom had said, like I think there's a lot of factors that kind of
Mm.
go into that aspect.
Can I also add as well that I think Max is something like he's a quick driver. I mean, many people will say that if they were all placed in exactly the same car, that Max would likely be fastest across the lap, out of everybody.
100%.
And so he's very much used to putting his foot down and getting the maximum out of the car and just going hard, being brave, taking risks. That's his driving style. But this season seems to be more about almost tactics and tactically deploying battery, thinking really about what you're going to use from the car and when you're going to use it. And this is something that the drivers can complain about. It's less about driving as fast as you possibly can and actually thinking about what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. So I don't think that suits Max as a driver. He's, I think, more old-fashioned, and it's very much foot to the floor and take risks. And so I think that's probably what we're seeing a little bit with him as well.
Interesting. Well, someone that obviously is one of his heroes, Antonelli's obviously one of his heroes is Max Verstappen. He had a very, very solid Q3 Back-to-back poles for him as well. 19 years old. Um, Megan, is he the real deal, or is this one of those kind of early season sort of hopes where sort of it'll peel off towards the end of the season?
I mean, as we've kind of discussed over the last two podcast episodes, I do think that he is still quite young. Um, so I think also with the developments of the Mercedes car this year, I think that is playing a huge factor, but I do think he just has so much talent as well. I think with his age, that's only going to grow as well. I mean, you look at it with Max as well, although Max was, out the gate incredible at his age, but um I think that's only going to develop as well. But right now he's showing he has talent because even, and we'll discuss this later, after that safety car deployed, he didn't have many mistakes, if any, at all throughout the race. So I think he's very good at what he does, and I think we're only going to continue to see that.
Nice. Well, let's get to the race itself. I thought we'd just start with the opening lap. Obviously, that's a great place to start, but I just thought that the race start was quite interesting because Antonelli, who you just mentioned, did actually have, and maybe that does come back to what your point about maturity or maybe a slight lack of. Did have a little bit of a wobbly opening. Obviously, there was wheel spin. Went down to sixth position after lap one. Yeah, Tom, do you think that is part of what Megan's saying about that sort of slight lack of inexperience, or is that just one of those potluck things that can happen in a race car?
Yeah, I think I don't know whether I'd read too much into it. I think it's happened to a lot of drivers and they're clearly getting used to it. They're having to
Happened in the last race,
um
didn't it? It did happen to did it happen to Antonelli in the last race? Am I making that up? I'm sure it did happen some. Was it Max? I think it was Max actually. Sorry, Max had a poor start, I think, in the last race. So yeah,
yeah.
you're probably right.
And then in the first race, I think it was one of the RB cars that like bogged down, and that's when we saw Colin Pinto take, that incredible avoiding action. So yeah, it's happening, and it's because they're having to rev the cars to such an extent this year to get them moving. And actually, I think that's something that the FIA have changed now because in the first race the lights went out so quickly that none of them got enough time to bring it up to the amount of revs they needed. So I think in this race, I certainly heard one of the commentators say, "Oh, there's more of a gap now. We're going to have more of a gap between those five red lights holding and then going out." So I think it's something they're still getting used to. Obviously, some drivers have, I think, benefited from this. The
Yeah.
Ferrari seem to be very good at getting off the line. Even the McLarens now. I know Oscar has been practicing. Oscar had a tremendous start from the line. So you're seeing that these drivers that are able to make it work, they get a huge advantage off the line. So I think it's just something that Kimi will have to work on, and I've no doubt that Mercedes will get up to speed with that one.
Well, I was going to say, did both of you play or still play Mario Kart? Because on the race start, if you too much on the throttle, it sort of conks you out, doesn't it? So it did feel a bit like Mario Kart watching that at the start
Yeah, it did. It
from
really did.
Antonelli. But yeah, you mentioned Piastri. Yeah, he'd had a really good start to the race. Obviously after a poor start to the season. Megan, in terms of his race, and we'll get to the other drivers in a second, but do you think they'd take any comfort from the fact that they seem to be at least fighting a bit further up the field? Obviously, well, Piastri even finished the race, which is obviously a nice thing for him. So that's positive, right, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that after the first couple of races, it was looking quite like doom and despair a bit for McLaren, especially even with Lando. But Oscar, I mean, I'm thrilled for him to have such a fabulous race overall because he did essentially, I don't want to be too crude, but like he did bottle it at the end of the year last year. So it was really good to see him out in the front, like where we're used to seeing him. Um, yeah, I'm excited also to see where they'll end up. I think the 5-week break is going to be very key for this as well.
Yes,
Um, in terms of where they'll develop, especially upgrades on the car potentially.
that
Like
is so
I'm
true.
just excited to see where they come out on top of this because I think obviously as we've mentioned, I think it was like the first podcast episode actually, the first few races you're getting the kinks out of where you sit on the grid. And I think this 5 week break is going to be so essential for McLaren, especially Oscar.
That is such a good point you raised because I feel like a team like McLaren will probably benefit from that break. Like you said, it's a bit like pre-season again almost for them, isn't it? Because 5 weeks is a long time in F1 and the amount of resource involved and all the engineers and mechanics they have at their disposal. Um, yeah, maybe we'll see McLaren fighting back after that 5 week break. Yeah, so that does bode well, doesn't it, for McLaren potentially? Because obviously the next race, Megan, like you say, is in 5 weeks' time in Miami. So yeah, you never know. They could fight back, couldn't they? You never know. But back to the race itself. I thought there was some nice back and forward. Obviously, we had Russell overtaking Leclerc on lap 4. I felt like the energy deployment from Ferrari wasn't really helping Leclerc at the start of the race. Um, what else happened at the start of the race? We also had Piastri managing to retake the lead. Like we were just saying, really good to see him have that race pace. And then obviously Kimi got past Norris on Casio Triangle, turn 16 to 17 on the same lap. There's lots of overtakes, wasn't there, in this race? I mean, it's quite typical on Casio Triangle, that chicane. Are we a fan of that chicane? I think it's one of the best in F1. Tom, do you like that part of the track?
I do, yeah. I am generally a chicane fan, I think. I always like to see them even, in these modern street circuits. I mean, that's a whole nother question entirely as to whether I'm a fan of them, but I do like to at least see that they've been incorporated because they are a bit of a staple of F1. And yeah, particularly, like I think, Monaco down by swimming pool there is probably one of the most famous. But yeah, it's a good one, and it's always it's I like it because it comes right at the end of the track as well. It's always an exciting part of the race. So
The other
yeah.
good one is isn't it? Is it in Austria? There's a really tight chicane right at the end, just before the final straight, I think, which is always fun to watch. But okay, I'll ask you a question to you both. Um, do you prefer overtakes on a chicane like or around near a chicane like that, or on a straight? Megan, you can go first. What's your thoughts?
I'm someone that is very competitive, so I think for me, I love the thrill of an overtake on a chicane. I think there's just nothing like it, and it's just so tight that it's just unmatched to see that happen.
Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, can I be really annoying and go somewhere down the middle? Like I
Yeah,
quite
of course.
like
Very diplomatic of you.
But yeah, I mean, I like both. I like both, but I think like my answer would maybe be, if a driver hangs it around the outside of a sort of high speed kind of corner. You actually saw, I think, a couple at Suzuka, and you think there's no way they're gonna make a move there. There's no way they can make that stick, and then they just hang around quite a high speed corner. I think for me they're the most exciting because you're like, oh, are they gonna come together? Is he gonna make it stick? And it really rewards bravery. So that's probably my favorite. But I mean, racing's racing. Like it's all good, isn't
Yeah.
it? Really?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think a chicane is really fun to add to Megan's point when you see an overtake on that. Yeah, I like all racing. I'll go with that. I'll be diplomatic. Yeah, so well, back to the race. So I was going to speak as well about Verstappen again because on lap 21, Norris overtook him, but it looked really, really easy, Megan. I don't know if you remember that lap, but it just kind of was a testament to like what we were saying earlier about Red Bull, just kind of like there wasn't like it just felt like there wasn't the same element of fight from Max at the start of the race. Like that's obviously down to the mechanics of the car, perhaps. But yeah, it's just crazy to me because like, do you remember last season? Every season that Max been involved in F1, he would never let you pass. Like unless you crash into him, basically. Like you have to be the quality of racing you have to beat him in a race. You have to be right at your level, and it just didn't seem to be there, did it, for him?
I don't think so at all. Again, I don't know if it's like a mental thing that he's going through as well, like if it's just he doesn't care. at this point? Like, I don't know.
Surely
Like,
not, Megan. Surely he
I
does
mean, like,
care.
I'd like to think that he still has that fight in him, but it's just like you've seen it over the past couple of races as well. Like, he's just been basically handing positions over to other drivers. And you would, like you mentioned, you never used to see that. So I don't even know what's really, I think it comes down to a mental thing for all the drivers as well, because he would never do that
Yeah.
over the years.
It's mad. Tom, do you have any thoughts? I mean, that lap, I don't know if you can remember it off the top of your brain, but like just those examples of just like Max just kind of giving up to add to Megan's point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a mental side of it. I think, he seems really unmotivated. But I think a big part of that comes down to, how much can he actually do? It seems that, a lot of the drivers are saying, if we've deployed our battery and we've got nothing left and the car behind us that we've just overtaken has been harvesting and does, there's literally nothing we can do about it. We are sitting ducks, is I think
Yeah.
one of the phrases that some of them used. And so, if they know that, that automatically is going to take some of the fight out of them because they literally can't do anything. Whereas, you know, last year and years previous, okay, we have DRS, which gives the car behind an advantage, but you could park your car in the middle of an apex, and there's n pretty much no way that the car behind is getting past you. Like as you say, Robin, Max was brilliant at that, getting his elbows out, and he would literally say, you're either going to crash into me or you're going to stay behind me. So, but this season with the new regulations, the disparity in speeds, when a car is using its battery and when a car's harvesting is so great. And I'm sure we'll talk about sort of the dangers that we've now seen because of that. It means that a lot of drivers just they literally can't do anything, and that is taking the fun, for them and many fans as well, out of racing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get on to the future of racing a bit later, but that's a nice little teaser for us. But in terms of the race, I thought the most exciting part was lap 22 and 23. Russell's obviously behind Piastri after the pit stop. And then obviously we had the yellow flag for, unfortunately, we mentioned him earlier in Q1 qualifying, Ollie Bearman. Yeah, I'll get on to Kimi, how Kimi benefited from that afterwards. But just in terms of that crash, Megan, you mentioned before we started recording that Carlos Sainz has come out and made a statement, which I'll read out in a second. But in terms of the crash itself, Megan, it was a shocking crash, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it happened so quick. I know who's going after Franco Colapinto on that
Yeah.
turn.
Colapinto, the hero of the day.
I do we know did they say like was it just oversteer or we can
Well,
cut this out?
I was going to propose this both to you because obviously watching it live, it was quite a grey, misty day, wasn't it? It looked quite sort of dusty as well. And I was
Mhm.
wondering whether visuals would have played a factor because it just seemed quite an odd crash, didn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it was a strange one. I think my understanding, well, initially when I was watching it, I have to say I blamed Colapinto. I was like, oh, he looks like he's moved under braking, but actually, I don't think that's fair at all. I think
He was quite
what
wide as well, wasn't he? I don't think, I'm
he
not sure, but
was, and it was. I think actually it was difficult to gauge on a screen, but obviously when you're driving a car, it will be much different. My understanding is that the disparity in speeds was huge. So I think, and I might be wrong in saying this, but something I saw this morning is I think Behrman was traveling up to about 45 kilometers per hour, more than
mm,
Colapinto arriving at that corner, which is quite a lot. And that's because Colapinto was going a lot slower. He was harvesting his battery, and Behrman was deploying, so he had a huge speed
yeah.
boost, trying to overtake him, as you say, Megan. And then he wasn't expecting to reach Colapinto so quickly, and then had to take avoiding action, and then puts a couple of wheels on the grass. And as soon as you're on the grass at that speed, you're in trouble, and ended up having a 50G crash, which is to anyone listening, that is a huge impact. It's and luckily there was some runoff as
Concussion
well.
levels, isn't it, Tom? Really, it's very dangerous, like you say.
Absolutely, and you could see, what an impact it was from the way that, Ollie got out of the car and, could barely walk. And, thankfully, no broken bones and he seems to be okay. But, he had some runoff area to slam on the brakes. And some people are making, very valid point that had this been a track like Baku or Jeddah, high speed street circuits, very unforgiving, close barriers, then that could have been a lot worse. So, yeah, my understanding is that the drivers I think are blaming the new regulations, and I think you're going to read out what science said, but my understanding is that he had warned the FIA that an accident like this was coming essentially.
Well, yeah, there's two elements. You mentioned the grass as well just then. Maybe like to your point, maybe the track layouts of somewhere like Japan, that grass area that kind of he skidded off and then over onto the barriers. They might have to start looking at a lot of the track layouts, like you say, with these new regulations and the speed these cars can get up to, and not stop at quick enough. But yeah, I'll read out the statement that Megan found this, from the presser. So yeah, Carlos Sainz has said that hopefully we can come up with a solution that doesn't create these massive closing speeds, a safer way of going racing. He added, I was so surprised when they said they would sort out qualifying and leave the racing alone. It's exciting. As drivers, we've been extremely vocal that the problem is not only qualifying, it's also racing. And we were warning this type of accident was always going to happen. Here, we were lucky that there was an escape road. Now imagine, like you said, Tom, to add to your point, now imagine going to Baku, Singapore, Las Vegas, and having this type of closing speeds crashing next to the walls. So yeah, Megan, what do you think on this? Do you think more needs to be done for the safety of the drivers?
I 100% think so. Whether that will take in effect is obviously we'll have to see what unfolds there. But I think when drivers are voicing a concern, like that's very valid. Um, I think that there has to be some sort of change, especially like if it's multiple athletes, it's not just him, it's also Max Verstappen calling out the regulations as well. There's been others on the grid, but I think that's when you have to take a look. Okay, this isn't working. And it's not just like, okay, drivers aren't winning. There's like, that's why they're unhappy with the regulations. It's because it's the safety. And I think at the end of the day, that's way more important than anything else. But
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. Well, I suppose time will tell. I mean, they've put an awful lot of money into these new regulations, haven't they? I think it's billions, I read. So money talks, doesn't it? And I think it's gonna, well, money talks, but also I'd like to think the FIA are very stringent with safety. I mean, F1 has got a lot safer over the years, hasn't it, Tom? I mean, I used to watch back old races with my dad and watching Senna, obviously, before he passed away, and some of the crashes you'd see, and obviously sadly Senna's as well, absolutely horrific, weren't they? So safety is a paramount, and obviously we've got the halo now and things like this, but maybe they will have to review it, won't they, Tom?
Yeah, I think you're right that there's been huge developments in safety. I mean, I think we saw, really where that's got to with Grosjean's crash a few years ago. Um,
He
I
was lucky
think.
to get out of it, wasn't he? To be fair, because yeah,
Y- yeah, it was. I mean, you'd never think you'd see anything like that in Formula One. It was crazy. So I think hopefully this is a bit of a wake-up call because I think until now, I think the FAA have been largely ignoring sort of the moaning drivers just because, okay, well, they're not enjoying it so much. But in terms of, meeting an overtake quota, the FAA were probably rubbing their hands together because, they've like doubled or whatever the stat is, the amount compared to last year per race. So,
yeah,
they were like, oh, in our eyes, this is making it more exciting. But, the drivers then have been saying we don't like this. And then hopefully now, as you say, Megan, there's another level to this now that they can say, actually, we need to think about safety as well as, whether we're enjoying it or not. I know that Lando said post race that the essentially the FAA don't care about what the drivers think in terms of enjoyment, but hopefully they do care about what the drivers think in terms of safety. And as you say, Robin, that over the years it suggested that they do. And I think a crucial bit of context is the significance of Carlos Sainz saying this, as I believe that he is one of the directors of sort of the drivers group, and
yeah,
so he's sort of like a spokesman for them. And so clearly he's speaking on behalf of the drivers on the grid and trying to argue their cause in terms of safety. So we'll see what happens, but we'll see if the FAA start to listen to their demands now.
Yeah, of course, and just to say that obviously the FIA do have sort of strict concussion protocols. They've got the if in doubt sit out. They'll do evaluations. I don't think, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think Ollie Bearman did suffer a concussion, but there was a bit of a concern that he might have done at that speed. But I'm sure they'll do all the correct medical procedures just to check he's safe to drive. But luckily for his sake, there is this 5 week gap. So hopefully, regardless of what injury he's got, he'll be good to go in Miami. But yeah, just going back to the race itself, um, and yeah, we do wish Ollie Bearman well. We hope he's okay. But in terms of the race itself, obviously Kimi Antonelli was probably the best beneficiary of that crash and that yellow flag because he was able to get that cheap pit stop in lap 23, 22, and 23, sorry. That kind of felt like the defining moment in this race, obviously, that crash and then the cheap pit stop, didn't it, Megan?
Yeah, I would say because he stayed out
Yeah.
when everybody else had pitted before the safety car, that put him in the best obvious position to win. I will say, I don't know how you guys felt. Do you think I mean, the other drivers were affected as well because they had pitted before him. Do you think that it was quite premature, especially for Oscar? I think it was lap 15, so like a few laps before the crash in the safety car. He had said, I think that we can hang on to it if we keep at this pace and everything. Do you think it was a bit premature for him to say that? Because obviously
Well,
anything can happen.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say that was he trying to go for a one-stop strategy in this race? I mean, just go long haul. I mean, yeah, I can see the logistics, and I'm sure Tom will have his view in a second. But yeah, I can see the logic of that. I mean, McLaren have obviously struggled at the start of the season. They want to get that race win or a podium on the board, right? So they're just looking for any way to sneak it and hope, I suppose, faint hope that, like you say, no incidents happen. But with these new regulations, as Tom and you've mentioned, it's going to happen more often, right? We're going to, unfortunately, not that I want it to, but we're probably going to get more incidents and crashes and yellow flags, aren't we? Yeah, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think McLaren seemed that their priorities seemed to be actually just covering off Mercedes in term I think from the undercut. So that's why they wanted to pit when they wanted and you're absolutely right, Megan. I think Oscar genuinely did feel that they could go to the end if everything went their way. But also, Robin, your point is that from what we've seen, whether it's crashes or whether it's retirement for reliability problems, actually, you can't always think about the safety car factor, but I think it definitely is a factor that strategists need to be thinking about because whether it's an Aston Martin or a Cadillac pulling up on the side of the track because they've broken down and then that bringing a safety car out, or whether it's a crash, and it's something that you kind of always have to think about. So I think yeah, clearly McLaren weren't thinking about the safety car; they were more worried about Mercedes, and that's I think why they went in for an early stop. And unfortunately, that's come back to haunt them.
I was going to ask you both a quiz question. It's a bit unfair. I haven't prepped you both, but seeing as you've mentioned cars finishing a race, do you either of you know when was the last without cheating? I know we're working remotely, so I suppose you could cheat if you want to, but that'd be a shame. But when was the last F1 race where all of the cars that started the race finished the race? Silence is probably not a good part of this podcast. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Do you guys know?
I would have to have a huge guess. I mean,
Yeah,
I
guess.
want
Have a
I
guess.
want to say at some point last year, but like the way that you're teeing up the question, it sounds like it's far longer than that. Um, was there any a point last year when the all
Well,
20?
have a
No.
have a guess and see what you think.
This is probably
Maybe name a race and we'll see how far off you are.
okay. Was it at the end of the season? Because I look,
Okay, yes, it was. Yeah, 2025 it was.
What race was it? Or are you
Should
still
I tell?
asking us to
Okay,
guess?
well, yeah, Megan, do you want to have a guess or should I tell you the answer?
I completely forget, but was
It
it
was
Vegas?
the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix.
Oh, damn.
And I've Googled this obviously, so I'm sorry, I've cheated a bit, but yeah, it was the 18th such instance it says in F1 history. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in my brain, you kind of feel like every race has lots of incidents, but that wasn't that long ago, to be fair. So yeah, it's good.
Singapore's
Sorry.
Singapore's quite unforgiving as well, so that's
Yeah,
slightly surprising, any
yeah, I was
mistakes being
surprised.
so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, for in terms of this race, so after that restart, we had a really good perfect jump from Antonelli in lap 28, and then a little bit of a lull until lap 37. When I don't really know why, I'm not sure if Russell mentioned, I don't think anyone saw in the post-race interview, but Russell really slowed down in lap 37. I think there might have been a slight deployment issue, and just sort of again a bit like what we were saying earlier with Verstappen, just sort of let his his competing driver through, which was Leclerc at this point. Um, Lap 42, Hamilton and Leclerc were fighting, which was fun to see. I'm really enjoying Megan. I think we saw it in the last race and in the first race. Some really clean, uh, driving between the two Ferraris. It's good to see, isn't it?
I know, I think they're actually having quite fun with it. It's not, as we mentioned, I think last podcast, it's not like papaya rules, how they were, obviously favoring one driver over another, as we've seen. But I think they're having quite a fun time. And also, I think it's enjoyable for the both of them, considering how tragic last year was. So I think they're having
We
just
don't
fun.
talk about it. When we finally get Ludo on the podcast, I really want to get a deep dive from her about Ferrari last season.
Yeah, no, I think they're just having fun, like being up top for what's been like forever for them, what feels like it. But I think they're just having fun going at it,
Yeah.
honestly.
No, definitely. I mean, after that point, lap 43, obviously Hamilton had a bit of poor braking, locked up on the chicane, the Casio triangle, and Russell overtook him. 48, we had a great fight between George Russell and Leclerc, and then yeah, back to Ferrari in lap 48. We also had that was a great lap actually because there was a lot going on, and you had sort of the mini screen if you're watching the race, kind of like lots of fighting going on between George Russell and Leclerc, and then obviously Hamilton overtaking Norris into fifth on the main straight. So after Lando had used too much boost, so there was lots of fighting, wasn't there, happening between in those kind of later laps, Tom?
Yeah, yeah, there was, and that's probably the FAA's argument is that people love overtakes, and we're giving that to you with these regulations. I think I agree. The watching the Ferraris battle it out pretty much for three races in a row now has been great entertainment. I think if you are a Ferrari fan, you might not be enjoying it so much because they have come close at times to touching, and with any team when you see your two drivers skirmishing like that, I'm sure it makes for very nervous viewing. But they're two brilliant drivers that and they clearly respect each other. They're respecting each other's space as well. So we're only three races in, but as of yet, there's been no horrible moments. And I think the rivalry doesn't seem to be there between Charles and Lewis. If they get into a point where they're fighting for a championship, we'll see whether that remains the case. But previously when we've had Red Bulls come together, we've had Mercedes come together, Nico and Lewis. It's been very ugly, but this has been very it's gentleman's racing, shall we say?
You know what? To add to that word, gentleman, I was literally about to say, I feel like, I mean, we saw Charles Leclerc's wedding where, I mean, he looked like an absolute gentleman with his beautiful wife when they got married a few weeks ago. And I really feel like on the track as well, he is a gentleman, Charles Leclerc, this is. So yeah, Megan, I was just going to say, lap 50 to 51, obviously George Russell into the chicane at Casio Triangle. Russell at that point was in the podium places, so he must have been quite happy. But Charles Leclerc into turn one, some great racing from him, obviously weaving his way round on the outside of turn one. Yeah, he did. He had a good end to that race, didn't he, Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, I was thrilled for him to be on the podium this weekend because we've wanted to see him succeed for so long, as we'd mentioned. But yeah, his strategy at that end was fantastic. And I know their commentators were saying that George was hoping for that late push to be on podium this weekend, but it obviously didn't work in his favor. I think Charles had a flawless end to that race and it paid off because he was on podium this weekend.
Yeah, he's having a solid season, and like what you were saying, Tom. So is Hamilton. So it bodes well for Ferrari, and I think this 5 week break will do a lot of these teams good. We spoke about McLaren earlier. I really do think it'll be a point where a lot of those teams will just go into race mode in those 5 weeks and just try and find a bit more performance and try and compete with the two Mercedes. Because Tom, I was going to ask you about Kimi obviously going on to win this race. Really solid race from him. Obviously, I did help, like we were saying earlier, with the cheap pit stop in lap 22 into 23. He's now the youngest ever leader of a Formula One championship at 19 years old. It's impressive stuff, isn't it?
It is impressive stuff, and I think if you're Toto Wolff, if there's a lot of questions about your choice to bring him into F1 so early last season, to skip the ranks that many drivers have to take before they get to F1, and to prove themselves, then I think you're probably, as we have seen already from Toto this season, you've probably got a smug smile on your face. Um, I think he's showing why Toto made that decision, and Toto saw something in him, and he's proving that right now. He looks quick, he looks composed, he's still so young, and it looks like he's going to have a great career ahead of him. But he certainly looks to be as fast, if not faster, than George at times, and getting the most out of this car. I mean, you're right to say that the pit stop was a gift, and he's got more to work on. Race starts, and things have been good for him. It'll be interesting to see when things aren't so good how he handles that, because that's a big thing for a young F1 driver. Um, but yes, things have been really good for him, and it's interesting because you know from the commentators' perspective early on, that they were sort of saying, it's only a matter of time before these two Mercedes that didn't start too well are going to make their way through the pack, and it certainly felt like that. It certainly felt like it's a matter of when, not if, is the right saying, I think. But for George, it didn't quite happen. And for Kimi, it was the pit stop. So whether that's a sign of more things to come, whether Mercedes might not be as dominant as we thought, and whether McLaren and Ferrari might have something to say, it'll be interesting to see. But I still think Mercedes are very much the team to beat, and I think Kimi's going to be there with George throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. Megan, would you attest to what Tom's just said, or are you going to completely go against him and go against the grain?
No, I agree with Tom. I think also to top off on his point about Toto Wolff, I do think he's probably, I would love to see like whatever group chats that they have in WhatsApp right now. Because I'm sure he's feeling like quite smug in the sense that like, he brought this young Italian guy like onto the grid and now he's just
Well, given how it was last season, right? Like to your point, I mean, we were sending each other funny memes about how bad Kimi was last season, weren't we? And he's
yeah.
turned it around, and like you say, he must be very smug right now, mustn't he?
Like I'm sure it feels good too because I mean Mercedes they were kind of I mean they were up there last year but it was almost more middle pack and obviously they brought on Kimi and it was a kind of a development year for Mercedes if you will like a rebuilding year after Lewis left. So I'm sure it's really nice to have such success so far this year. I mean George it's I don't know what's kind of going on for him right now. I think obviously there's just errors that happen with the car as they always do. But I think Mercedes is just they're just smashing it, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just want to mention as well, obviously, the champion from 2 seasons ago now. I keep thinking he's won it every year for the last 20 seasons, but sadly Max didn't win it last year. But he nearly got past Gasly on the final chicane, but had a bit of a slip on the track, finishing in eighth. Obviously, a very disappointing season, and post race, we were just watching it back, weren't we, Tom, before we started this recording, and yeah, his words were very hard to pass. So. Yeah, it's not boding too well for Max, is it, Tom? But like you were saying, maybe 5 weeks off will be good for him.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good for Max. I mean, we were talking about the sort of what's turned into a meme of him
Oh, waving.
waving
Yes.
as he was passed by I think it was Pierre,
Yeah.
which is just funny to be honest. It shows that he's not taking things too seriously as we've already talked about. But there's been real
At least he didn't
spec
swear at him
yeah, I mean,
in the car.
exactly. Yeah. But there's been real speculation post race now that this might be Max's last race in Formula One. Whether he takes a break and comes back or whether he, really does retire. I mean, we see lots of drivers, retire in inverted commas and then come back. So it'd be interesting to see because I mean he doesn't seem happy. He doesn't seem to like the regulations. If whether the regulations change again and that convinces him to stay, we'll see.
Yeah.
But maybe if he's had his four championships, he doesn't think he's going to win another one. Certainly, whilst things stay as they are, it doesn't look like any other team, really is going to make changes that will allow him to come there. It doesn't look like we're talking about Mercedes maybe, but it doesn't look like Mercedes will want to do that. I can't see that happening with McLaren or Ferrari either. So if Max is unhappy with Red Bull, if he's unhappy with the sport generally, he's already said that he's considering going and doing other forms of racing, and that would be sad, but it shows where he is and how he's feeling currently.
I think, well, yeah, Megan, I know like you don't want to admit, but I know that you are secretly a little bit of a Max fan, although we can edit this out of the podcast if you want me to. But what I wanted to ask you, if this is Max's final season, which I don't think it is, Tom, but I like the clickbait element of what you're saying for the podcast. No, I'm joking. But if this is his final season, Megan, what's been one of your favorite moments for you watching him over the last couple of seasons or
Well,
10
I
years,
will
however long it's been?
I will start out by saying I know you guys have been ratting on me for like the last couple episodes to get me to admit if I have a favorite driver. Yes, I will admit now finally that it's a bit Max. Yeah. Um, but I will say I will be very sad to see him go. I know there was discussions as well, and he's also mentioned this in to press that once he kind of became a father, like he would rather be, spending
Yeah,
time with his kids, as well as exploring other opportunities in the world of motorsport. So there was that discussion last year um, when his daughter was born. Is he going to retire? Like coming into this season, there was kind of smoke up in the air with that. But I think he has achieved so much as well that you can't, he didn't go out on like a bad note. He gave it his all, basically. And I don't know, I think like for me, my favorite part was just of seeing him race over the years. I think probably was his first championship win ever. I think that was, you know, even we're seeing it
boo.
now. I'm sorry, but
I'm
like I
joking.
think we're seeing it with even like younger drivers like Kimmy now. Just the raw talent, like the passion, the guts for it all.
Yeah,
And that celebration, I think that was like the moment I was like, oh my God, shit, this guy's, he's got it.
he's finally
Um,
got it. Yeah.
yeah. But I think he's had such a successful career. It's not something that is going to be, could he have done more? Like, I mean, with Lewis, there's always going to be that what if. I know that's a
Yeah.
hot take, but um, I think Max is just, he doesn't really care. Like, he just does it and then he just does it for the love of the game, if you will.
Yeah, Tom, do you have a favorite sort of Max moment? I mean, there's lots, but yeah, it's just that come to mind, like or funny moments that you've enjoyed from Max so far in his F1 career.
Um,
You can
can
say
I
no, you can
say
say
can I say the bit where like he like almost threatens to knock out Ocon like post race,
oh,
like when they're on the
brilliant.
way, like that was crazy.
Was that COVID season? I swear there was a COVID. Was that during COVID when they sort of
yeah, it
there
can't.
was
It was when
2021, right?
was it 2021? It was 2021. Oh, okay.
it was when Ocon was still when it was still when it was racing points. So he was in his pink
Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah.
BWT overalls, and like Max is like pushing him, when they're on the scales post race. I think that was hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's difficult because I think if Max was genuinely, competing for the championship, I think his attitude would be different. I think that there wouldn't be questions surrounding, an exit from Formula One. And I think it is addictive. I think, Formula One itself for drivers is addictive. I think winning, clearly is addictive. And so long as it's going well, I think drivers would struggle to exit the sport, even with, family circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, we see drivers come back a lot. It's happened to Alonso. Is it what like is he come back twice or no? Is it just once that he's come
I think
back?
it is technically twice, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. That
Yeah.
does sound
So
right.
and Schumacher came back. Many drivers. And, we've seen. Well, I mean, they didn't retire, but Checo and Valtteri, both came back. So if Max did leave, and I think it's a big if, despite the clickbait of what I previously said, I think I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't say that would be the end.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It would be sad to see him go. I think F1 wouldn't be the same without him. There's been many great Max moments, but I wouldn't be surprised if, he took a year or two out and then came back. And I think teams would have him as well. So
The one that came to my head now was it Monza where his car literally goes on top
yeah,
of Hamilton's. That was crazy. I mean, I think it was the halo that saved Hamilton's head being squished, but obviously it
yeah.
wasn't deliberate. But that was a crazy moment in that crazy season that Megan mentioned earlier, 2021, which was obviously a fantastic season and has obviously brought a lot of new eyes to the sport, which is obviously a really good thing. So yeah, we need drivers like Max Verstappen in the sport for moments like that. Whether you love or hate him, you need people like that that bring the narrative and bring the excitement and bring those eyes to the sport. So I know I was joking and I was joking, but I do hope he stays and I hope he has a car that he can compete in and get back to the max we know because love or hate that, I mean, he's fantastic, isn't he? I mean, one of the best drivers ever in the sport. So yeah, let's hope he has 5 weeks off and has a bit of a zen moment, maybe does a bit of yoga and feels a bit more chill and comes back with a new zest for the sport. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask you both obviously about that 5 weeks off. Oh, also, sorry, before I forget, just another funny moment that I wanted to just quickly mention. Obviously, was Norris laughing. I think was it on the race start he was laughing, or I can't remember. But it was quite funny just seeing him just sort of looking a bit resigned as well, similar to Max. I thought that was quite a funny moment. I like a bit of humor in sport. It's funny when you see those moments, like we were saying. But yeah, just wanted to talk as well, just briefly as well, the future of obviously some of the tracks given the conflict in the Middle East at the moment. Obviously we're not going to talk from a political point of view, but just from an F1 perspective, it is sad, right? Obviously, with I know safety comes first. I totally get that. But obviously next season, if things are still obviously unsafe from a race perspective and a race weekend and all the logistics that go into a race weekend and all the trucks and things that they need to bring all the kit and stuff. What do you think F1 will do? Do you think the race calendar will be shortened or will other tracks be given a chance? Yeah, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Robin. My gut instinct would say I think they would introduce other tracks. I think, the calendar is very demanding, but I think the demand is there if you know what I mean. So from a fan's perspective, from a money making perspective as well, I think it would be kind of crazy not to fill those gaps. So I probably would say that it would be filled with other tracks. I don't think it would be an instance of, like during the COVID years where we sort of had double races at, various tracks. Because obviously we don't have those COVID restrictions, they could go to other places. So it would be interesting to see potentially, where they would go.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Megan, what do you think?
Um, it would be difficult to say, also just because of logistics and planning, how quickly they could be able to turn around tracks. I think, forgive me also, I don't know if I'm going crazy saying this, but like, didn't they mention that they were potentially going to bring back Portugal on the calendar? Was that already set?
I think it's been muted, hasn't it? I mean, obviously, I
Yeah.
think there was talk of some of the tracks being pushed back, but I think with the logistics, like I was saying earlier, with all of the the moving parts needed to put on a race weekend. I mean, there's thousands of people needed in a certain location, isn't it? I think there just wasn't the time to push them back for this season.
Mm.
But yeah, I guess it remains to be seen. But I guess as a follow-up question, I was going to ask you both. Obviously, we spoke about maybe other tracks being reinstated, perhaps. Um, I just wondered, do either of you have a track that you kind of miss? I mean, obviously Zandvoort, this is last season this year, I think, technically speaking, or given what's happening, who knows? But yeah, are there any tracks that are like Zandvoort, for example, or other tracks that you miss and would like to see back on the race weekend?
Probably, okay, if I could choose one, I feel like I think this was a really great grade one circuit, but they stopped, I think it was in 20, I forget when they, was it 2017, but it was the Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia.
Oh yeah, that
I
was
would love
there
to see
for
that.
a few seasons, I think, on and off. But yeah, that's not been used for many years, I don't
I would
think.
love to see that back in because it was such a fun track and was also like, I know high speeds are obviously F1's whole mantra, but it was just such a fun track. I would
Yeah.
love to see that.
What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think that's a great shout, Megan, to be fair. I'd forgotten about that one. And I have great memories of just like playing the F1 game on like PlayStation or something. And I think it was always like round two. It was quite early on. So like I would always do that one like the most as well as like Albert Park because it would come up early. Like it's a great track. I think for me, like the Hockenheim, Germany, that I think was a great track. It always used to be wet there as well, which made it like really dangerous. And I think there was like a horrible like crash, like loads of cars were just going off like a few years ago. It might have been 2020. I wondered did they bring it back in 2020 or maybe I'm making that up. And then it might have been really wet and lots of cars struggled to stay on the track. But I think it's a classic. So I would love to see that back personally. I also think we talk about it like what might be coming back next season. I think they might be going to South Africa next season, which they haven't raced that for
Ooh,
years. But I'm
wow.
pretty sure it's on the calendar for 2027. So that could be a new one.
We obviously got Hockenheim, obviously Nürburgring. Yeah, there's lots of
Mm.
famous German tracks, and like you say, they're always quite fun to play on the F1 game. So yeah, I guess that we'll see from a safety point of view what's going on in the world, out of our control, unfortunately. But yeah, my final question to you both, on that sort of memory sort of style of questions, but I wondered, Megan first, do you have a favorite race that you've watched live on TV or at the track? I'm talking ever. What's your favorite race you've ever watched that you can remember?
Favorite race that I've ever watched. Okay, it's going to be more recent, but I think for me, my favorite race that I've seen was impartial because I went in person and that was my
Okay, well,
first.
that's fair enough.
So I'm going to be a bit biased on that, but Silverstone 2025 was fantastic.
It's not a bad one. It's not a bad one. Obviously, Norris did win that race, didn't it? That was a fantastic shout.
Got Nico up on podium as well. I think that was so
Yes.
special for him. Finally getting
Oh,
up on that podium, which was fantastic to see. But yeah, that race was fantastic being able to see it in person. I think
wow.
Tom, you mentioned that you were there as well last year,
Yeah,
right?
I was there as well. Did you get soaked? Were you because it rained like cats and dogs for like 10 minutes and I
It
felt
was
like I was in
so
the stand
bad.
that was underneath that rain.
Oh no.
I was thankfully under like the cover. It was just to the left of the Norris grandstands that day. But yeah, it was absolutely brutal weather. I know Robin's very keen on going to Silverstone in the near future. But yeah, the weather was absolutely atrocious that day. But I mean, the racing was phenomenal. So good.
Yeah, Tom, what about you? I mean, that is a great shout, Megan. That's going to be quite hard to beat. But yeah, Tom.
Yeah, that was great, and I was very fortunate to be there as well. I think for me, like if you would allow me to give two answers
Well, yeah,
from
I
a
mean,
like,
obviously, I sadly have never been physically to a race, so I can only give
yeah,
TV example. So yeah, do give a TV one if you'd rather.
yeah. I mean, in I did 2008, my first memory of F1 going. I was very lucky to go to Monaco with my dad, and that was unbelievable. Although to be honest, I can't remember it too well because I was very young. I was like 6, so. I wasn't able to fully appreciate it, but the memories I do have were pretty awesome. I'd say from a TV perspective, was it 2021? It was that season with Lewis and Max. And was it Saudi? Was it like was it that race where it was just so tense? Um I just remember watching it with my mates at uni, and we were just like shouting at the screen. Obviously was before like the controversy of Abu Dhabi, but it was, things were very much and like
Lots of
just
restarts, wasn't there, and things like that, and
yeah, lots of
crashes.
restarts. I think was it qualifying? Did Max put it in the barrier or something? I can't remember, but it was. I seem to remember that just being like hugely exciting and high stakes, and was one of the best races I recall watching on TV. So I'd probably say that one.
I think for me, I'm going to go. Sadly, I can't compete with these in attendance races, but I'm hoping to break that duck this year. But for me, it would have to be in 2011, the Canadian Grand Prix, which I think is still the longest ever race in F1 history. Obviously, Jenson Button even charging from the back of the field to win in
Mm.
horrendous rain as well. It had everything. It had crashes, pit stop, dramatic pit stops, everything. And obviously, seeing a British driver in the McLaren car come from the back of the grid was pretty special. So I think that's up there for me, just
It's
in
a
terms of
great
drama.
shout. Didn't Vettel he like slipped on like one of the final corners, right?
Yeah,
Just like unreal.
exactly. Yeah, it was a brilliant one. So that really got me sort of the bug for the sport. But yeah, there's been some brilliant races over this, hasn't there? I mean, we're only giving a couple of examples here, but we've had some great races, even this season. Like, I was going to end and say, I hope you both agree that like there's a lot of social media rubbish going on at the moment about people saying it's boring, but I really disagree. I mean, Megan, what do you think? It's been exciting, right?
I would say it's been actually quite exciting. I know we've discussed this previously. It can get boring, I think, in the sense of when there's a repetitive winner. But I think in terms of like the new regulations, there's been a lot of new kind of the chaos, if you will, that's been brought to F1 tracks. I think there's like good sides and bad sides to it, of course, like this
Yeah.
weekend with Ollie's crash, but I haven't thought that this season has been boring at all. So I don't know really what other people, especially on the internet, are looking for in terms of for it to be exciting or entertaining to them. But I've thought it's been quite a fun season to see so far.
Yeah, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think if Ferrari and McLaren can close the gap to Mercedes, then I think it can be a brilliant season and very exciting one. I think, if it's a foregone conclusion that Mercedes are just going to run away with it, then I can see people getting very unhappy. But it looks positive that actually there could be a bit of a fight this season. So if we get a bit more diversity on the podium, which we kind of have done this weekend, then yeah, I'm all for it, to be honest, and I am enjoying it. So yeah, what about you, Robin?
Yeah, I think it's been good. I think like we said, been a lot of overtakes, crashes, incidents. Obviously, there's still stuff to iron out with the regulations, but yeah, I think it's been really engaging. All the races have been really engaging. So yeah, I'm obviously I think with change, there's always things to iron out, but once they get those things sorted, I'm sure it'll be back to what we've been used to over the years. But finally, I wanted to just quickly ask you both your predictions for the next race, which is obviously in 5 weeks' time. So there's a long time to think about. There's a lot can change in 5 weeks in F1. But yeah, Megan, who do you think will win the race?
It's difficult to obviously predict because I think this 5 week break is going to provide a lot of clarity for a lot of teams, especially with changes and upgrades that they may want to make on the cars and whatnot. But um, obviously, Mercedes is looking quite strong. It wouldn't be too much of a shock if one of them was to come out on top again. But I would like to see a Ferrari win potentially.
Ooh. Okay.
It would be quite nice to see that, especially in Miami. But
Hamilton?
that would be fantastic. But I guess we'll have to see, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I think I don't see anyone beating Mercedes still at the moment. I think it will likely be one of them. I think George will likely be better come Miami, so long as reliability goes his way. So that would probably be my guess. But I would like to see a Ferrari win. I probably have to say I would be more inclined to see Charles win than Lewis. I'm sorry, Robin. Um, but yeah, we'll see, and let's hope that McLaren are there and thereabouts as well after 5 weeks, and maybe some more upgrades as well.
Well, yeah, on that note, I will go for a Hamilton win then. I think he's been fairly solid and there's been some good race pace, so I'm optimistic that Hamilton can turn some of that early sort of form into a race win. But yeah, we've come to the end of the podcast. You can find us on YouTube. We're a Championship Lap F1 podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, or you can find us on Instagram. So yeah, we'll see you next time in 5 weeks' time. Cheers, guys.
See you later. Thank you.